Hi, this is the beginning of another series in my ethics playlist. I have two, I have a bunch of different ethics videos in that playlist. I have like 65 videos in that playlist. But I have two basic series. One is of consequentialism, and the other is of deontology. And Kantianism is kind of warped into the deontology part. And I plan on going back to that a little bit and, going through J.S. Mill and, some of Kant more in depth. But for now, I've kind of concluded those series, and it's been a long time since I concluded the deontology series. But this is the beginning of a group of videos that are about virtue ethics. Virtue ethics or virtue theory in general. There's virtue ethics and there's virtue epistemology. There's more than just ethics in this sort of idea. But virtue ethics is something that came about with Plato and Aristotle. It began in ancient Greek philosophy, and essentially, the whole idea of Aristotelianism, came on pretty well, and then it kind of faded out, and then it in the 20th century, it caught back on with some proponents of virtue theory of the analytic tradition, actually. So. And one of those would be like Philip of Foot and others. But in this video, I just want to introduce the theory. This theory does not exactly conflict with deontology or consequentialism that much, but it's by far my favorite. It's definitely my favorite of the three, because I think. In the current manuscript in the current book I'm trying to pull together, with the time that I do have, virtue ethics is, a big thing that is woven into this big, argument, which I could elaborate more on, but I'm not exactly there yet to elaborate upon that. It's has to do with a lot of phenomenology and a lot of ethics and religion too, but that's to be extremely brief about it. But anyway, here I just want to discuss Aristotle. Aristotle, his virtue ethics comes from the book Nicomachean Ethics. That is a writing where he talks a lot about excellence, and he talks a lot about virtue, and he talks a lot about, but there's three main Greek words that come into basic discussion of virtue ethics. Now, again, this is also coming through this book here, Ethical Theory. It's a anthology compiled by Louis Poyman. And then I guess I'm in this series of virtue ethics. I'm using this book as well as another one, if I can find the content. In this series, I'm discussing Aristotle right now. I'm not discussing Aristotle in real depth. I'm just kind of trying to discuss the three basic Greek words that go into basic discussion of virtue theory, and those come from the discussion of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. In this Poyman anthology, there's Aristotle, Bernard Mayo, William Frankena, which critiques virtue ethics. Walter Schaller, McIntyre, which is a big one, Susan Wolf, Moral Saints, and then Poyman, In Defense of Moral Saints. So that's this one, and then I'm also going to be incorporating this one. This is one. This here is a book. It's a the Oxford Handbook of Ethical Theory, edited by David Kopp. It has two sets of readings. The first set is of meta-ethics, and the next is of normative ethics. And in the consequentialism and the ontology theory, I believe I used this particular book. I didn't use the Poyman anthology there. But in the, as along with that, with the Poyman stuff about virtue-based ethics, I will be discussing an article in here by Julia Annas for Virtue Ethics, as well as I will be discussing the article Virtues and Vices by Philip Lafoot, and possibly some others. I don't know how much else I have on that. Also I'll be incorporating Verna Marks. That's a person I've talked about quite a bit. He's a phenomenologist who has virtue-based ethics, and has the book Towards Phenomenological Ethics, based for metaphysically based ethics. Also, I may go into Paul Ricoeur, hermeneutical phenomenologist, in his book Oneself as Another. He's a hermeneutical phenomenologist, but his ethics are also virtue ethics. I don't know if I'll go into that. I mean, I don't know if I could really do that well here. It's just, I mean, I'm not, hermeneutical phenomenology is not really, I mean, Heidegger, Heidegger I can really get into, but contemporary hermeneutical phenomenology I have not really gotten into. Heidegger is probably the only hermeneutical phenomenology that I have really read and gotten into, and he was the first one. So, but anyway, I don't know. Anyway, Aristotle's virtue ethics. There's three main Greek concepts. First, arete. That is the Greek word for excellence or virtue, and we're talking. And in the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle lines up. He discusses and delineates a bunch of virtues that are necessary. Prudence is one of them, for instance. And in the translation that I have the Nicomachean Ethics somewhere in that pile of books. I have that as a separate thing somewhere. In that anthology, over in that one, as well as I think in the one that's in the Poyman anthology, he uses the word moral excellence quite a bit. And excellence, we're talking about, practice. It's sort of like use of those virtues, and use of those virtues is sort of, and you're doing that for the purpose of fulfillment of human life. That's kind of where the idea of arete comes from. The word arete was used a lot, and that word meant a great thing to be ascribed to a certain person. And if you take Greek history, that That's a word that will definitely come up. I mean, at least did for the one that I had. Next one. Phronesis. That is practical moral wisdom. That is the second, little area the second little thing that comes into the basic concepts of virtue ethics. Moral wisdom. It's having reason. Its use of it's kind of the idea of using and practicing virtues, trying to use virtues along with reason and wisdom. That is going to, the use of those two together, the use of those use of virtues, which creates a certain kind of excellence, arte, as well as ideas, as well as wisdom, basic, well, wisdom as for what is right. And then those two things coming together, the ideas of phronesis and arte, those two things being used together, well, not the words themselves, but what are entailed with respect to virtue ethics by those two words, arte and phronesis. Those two things, use of virtues, and thus having excellence, as well as wisdom itself, moral wisdom, wisdom as to what should be done, practical wisdom. The word practical is meaning as to what should be done, what should we be doing, what we should be doing, how things should be done. Use of those two things together, it's a sort of practice, practicing those virtues, along with wisdom, practically speaking, leads to the third concept, eudaimonia. This is translated from Greek as well-being, blessedness, happiness in a certain form. Happiness, not at all with respect to the happiness not at all with respect to the happiness of utilitarians and consequentialists, desire theorists. None of that. But what it really is with respect to virtue ethics, it's human flourishing, well-being, and it's flourishing and well-being in a objective state, with respect to everything else. And that is because of this build-up of, I guess I think of virtue ethics and the idea of eudaimonia and flourishing as respect to what has happened, a certain build-up, because of the arte and phronesis. Anyway. It's also looked at as ideas of exercising reason, wisdom, and also it's also thought of as being used in a certain city-state polis, the perfect place that this is exercised in, that type of government, the city-state. That's something that Plato stated. Anyway, those are the three basic concepts. And if you read Aristotle, that's what you're gonna see. So yeah, thanks. I will come back later with different. I will come back later with all those articles with more in-depth discussions.